He had just returned from the army after 8 months, when he saw something that froze his blood. His 7-year-old daughter was living in a treehouse during winter storms, but when he discovered why they forced her to live up there, his reaction shocked the entire town. Staff Sergeant Maverick Thornfield stepped off the transport plane at Fort Carson, Colorado. 8 months in Afghanistan had carved lines around his steel-gray eyes, but nothing had diminished the fire that burned when he thought of Sage. He'd planned this as a surprise. No warnings to Delilah Ashworth, his wife, who'd promised to care for Sage like her own. The woman had seemed perfect, gentle, nurturing, a child psychologist. Coming home makes it worth it, he told the Uber driver, anticipating his daughter's face when she saw him. 7-year-old Sage Thornfield pressed her hands against the wooden walls, trying to block the wind whistling through gaps. Her breath came out in white puffs, her body shaking with bone-deep cold. The treehouse had been her father's gift, a magical castle, but now it was her prison. Her backpack held few belongings Delilah allowed: a moldy blanket, water bottle for garden hose water, and her father's military jacket hanging like a tent. The warm house below glowed through windows. Sage could see Delilah preparing dinner. She wouldn't share. Roast chicken smell made her empty stomach clench. She wrote in her hidden notebook, Day 127 in treehouse. Still cold, still waiting for Daddy. Delilah had seemed heaven-sent when Maverick met her at a military support group, a child psychologist specializing in deployed parents' children. She's wonderful with Sage, neighbors told him. Such patience. Even Sage's teacher praised Delilah. She really cares about development. Their small wedding had Sage as flower girl, beaming as she scattered petals. Maverick watched Delilah dance with his daughter, both giggling. You picked a good one, his father said. That girl will be in excellent hands. Change didn't happen overnight. First week after deployment, Delilah maintained her act: favorite meals, homework help, nightly calls. But gradually things shifted. Stories got shorter, hugs less frequent, patience wore thin. Your father's not here anymore, Delilah said when Sage asked to make cookies. Things are different. You need independence. First punishment came when Sage knocked over milk, an hour in the treehouse. By December, punishment became permanent residence. Heater removed, belongings taken, lights disconnected. This teaches responsibility, Delilah explained. When your father returns, he'll expect a big girl who doesn't cause problems. What started as occasional punishment became Sage's reality. November brought entire days in the treehouse. December brought sleeping there nightly, regardless of weather. The space resembled a prison cell, walls scratched with desperate markings, a calendar tracking days, words carved with fingernails. Daddy, come home, I'm sorry. Moldy bread and fruit peels in corners, garbage that became meals while dinner smells drifted from the warm house. Do you want to disappoint your daddy? Delilah asked when Sage begged inside. He's fighting a war. Learn to be strong. Mrs. Patterson noticed something wrong but convinced herself not to interfere. She heard crying during storms, but Delilah had explanations. Sage is going through a phase, Delilah explained. Acting out because of deployment. I'm using natural consequences. It's proven therapeutic technique. Words sounded professional. Delilah was a psychologist after all. Sage's teacher worried too. The girl became withdrawn, fell asleep in class, flinched at noise, stopped eating. Is everything okay? Mrs. Rodriguez asked. I'm fine, Sage whispered. Delilah says I need to be stronger, like Daddy. The phone calls with his daughter had been Maverick's lifeline during the long months of deployment, but they'd become increasingly frustrating and heartbreaking as time wore on. Sage's voice had grown progressively quieter, more distant, more hollow. Their conversations, which used to last for 30 minutes or more, filled with excited chatter about school and friends, had dwindled to just a few minutes of stilted, painful exchange. How's school going, baby girl? He'd ask during their weekly calls, the satellite connection crackling with static that seemed to mirror the growing distance between them. It's good, Sage would whisper, her voice so quiet he had to strain to hear her even with the phone pressed tightly against his ear. Are you eating enough? Getting enough sleep? Playing with your friends? Yes, Daddy. Is Delilah taking good care of you? Are you two having fun together? There would always be a pause that lasted just a beat too long, a hesitation that made his chest tighten with unnamed dread. "Yes, Daddy." Delilah would invariably take the phone after these brief exchanges, explaining that Sage was tired from school. She'd fill the remaining time with cheerful updates about Sage's supposed activities, art projects they'd worked on together, movies they'd watched, baking sessions in the kitchen. "She's doing really well overall," Delilah would assure him in her calm, professional voice. "A little quiet sometimes, but that's completely normal for children with deployed parents. She misses you terribly, of course, but she's being incredibly brave about it." But Maverick's father's instincts told him a different story. Something fundamental had changed in his daughter's voice, something that had nothing to do with missing him or normal childhood development. The joy, the enthusiasm, the rapid-fire chatter about her day that had once filled their conversations, all of it had gradually faded until she sounded like a completely different child. The call that finally shattered his ability to rationalize away his fears had come on a Tuesday night in late November. Maverick had been trying to reach Sage for 3 straight days, but every time he called, Delilah had an excuse ready. Sage was sleeping. She was sick with a stomach bug. She was at a friend's house for a playdate. When his daughter's voice finally came through the phone that night, it was so weak and small that he almost didn't recognize it as belonging to his vibrant, talkative little girl. "Daddy," Sage had whispered, the single word carrying a weight of desperation that made his blood run cold. "Hi, baby girl. I heard you've been feeling sick. Are you feeling any better now?" She'd started to say something, then stopped abruptly. In the background, he could hear Delilah's voice, sharp and warning, though he couldn't make out the words. "I'm fine, Daddy," Sage had continued after the interruption, but her voice was even smaller than before. "When are you coming home?" "Soon, sweetheart. Very soon. I love you so much." "I love you too," she'd whispered, and then the line had gone dead. Maverick had stared at the satellite phone for a long moment, his hands actually shaking with a combination of fury and fear that he couldn't quite name. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong, and he was 8,000 miles away and completely powerless to fix it. 3 days later, he was on a military transport plane heading home, his emergency leave approved based on family crisis requiring immediate attention. He'd used every favor he'd ever earned, called in every debt, and made promises to his commanding officers that he wasn't entirely sure he could keep, but he was going home to his daughter, and that was the only thing that mattered. The house looked exactly the same from the outside. The Christmas wreath on the front door, the warm light glowing through the windows, the snow-covered yard that looked like a picture from a holiday card. For a moment, Maverick almost convinced himself that his fears had been unfounded, that whatever he'd heard in Sage's voice had been his imagination. He'd paid the taxi driver and walked slowly up the front path, savoring the moment. He'd decided not to ring the doorbell. He wanted to surprise them. His key still worked in the front door, and he stepped into the warm entryway with a smile on his face. "Sage, Delilah, I'm home," he called out. The house was quiet, too quiet. He'd expected to hear the sounds of dinner preparation, maybe the television, certainly some sign of life. Instead, there was an eerie stillness that made his soldier's instincts prickle with unease. He walked through the living room, noting that many of Sage's toys were missing. The family photos that had covered the mantelpiece were gone, replaced by generic decorative items. It was as if his daughter had been systematically erased from her own home. "Sage," he called again, louder this time. A movement in the backyard caught his eye through the kitchen window. He looked out and felt his blood turn to ice in his veins. There, in the treehouse he'd built as a place of joy and imagination, was his daughter. But she wasn't playing. She was huddled in the corner, wrapped in what looked like his old military jacket, her small body shaking with cold. Even from the ground he could see that her lips were blue, her face pale as snow. The treehouse, their magical castle, had been stripped of everything that had made it special. No fairy lights, no colorful decorations, no heater, just bare wood and a child who looked like she was slowly freezing to death. Maverick didn't remember moving. One moment he was standing at the kitchen window, and the next he was at the base of the oak tree, climbing the ladder with a speed that defied gravity. "Sage," he called out as he reached the top. She looked up at him with eyes that were too old, too tired, too full of pain for a 7-year-old child. For a moment she didn't even seem to recognize him. Then her face crumpled, and she launched herself into his arms with a sob that came from somewhere deep in her soul. "Daddy," she whispered against his neck, her voice hoarse and broken. "Is it really you?" She was so thin, so cold. Her small body felt fragile in his arms, like a bird with broken wings. The treehouse that had once been filled with laughter and dreams now reeked of suffering and despair. Maverick carried his hypothermic daughter down, while Delilah appeared, face masked with concern. "Maverick, you're early. I wasn't expecting. What the hell is my daughter doing in that treehouse? She was playing. She's hypothermic. She's been living out there." In bathroom, warm water revealed truth. Bruises, scratches, frostbite. Ribs visible, hair matted. "How long, Sage?" "Since snow started," she whispered through chattering teeth. Delilah said, "I needed to be strong like you. She said you'd be proud I didn't cry." As he washed months of neglect away, Sage told everything. Punishments escalating to months. Meals reduced to scraps. Nights huddled in darkness. "She said you told her to make me stronger. She said if I complained, you wouldn't want me anymore." "She lied, sweetheart," Maverick said, voice breaking. "I never said that. I would never want anyone to hurt you." Within 30 minutes, house filled with police, paramedics, child services. Sage hospitalized while Delilah's lawyer called it misunderstanding. But evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Walsh's assessment. This child shows systematic abuse. Frostbite indicates prolonged freezing exposure. This was torture. Story went viral. Veterans rallied around Maverick. Neighbors came forward admitting guilt. They'd seen Sage in storms, heard crying, but Delilah's credentials convinced them everything was controlled. Delilah's trial lasted 3 weeks. When Sage testified about months of cold, hunger, fear, there wasn't a dry eye in courtroom. "She said it would make me strong like Daddy. She said if I cried, Daddy wouldn't want me anymore." Jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty on all charges. 12 years for child abuse, endangerment, psychological torture. 6 months after Delilah's conviction and sentencing, Sage and Maverick were living in a completely different world. They had moved to a new house on the other side of Colorado Springs, far from the treehouse that had become a symbol of so much pain and trauma. Their new home was a modest ranch-style house with a large, sunny backyard and no trees tall enough to support any kind of elevated structure. Sage was attending therapy sessions twice a week with Dr. Sarah Chen, a child psychologist who specialized in helping young victims of severe trauma learn to heal and trust again. The process was slow, often painful, and sometimes seemed to move backward before it moved forward. Sage still had frequent nightmares about being cold and alone. She startled easily at sudden noises and sometimes asked permission to do things that normal children would do automatically, like getting a drink of water, using the bathroom, or even speaking when adults were talking. But there were good days too, and they were becoming more frequent as time passed. Days when Sage laughed spontaneously at something funny on television. Days when she built elaborate structures with her new set of building blocks, her face focused and content. Days when she talked excitedly about her friends at her new school, or asked Maverick to read her favorite story for the 3rd time in a row. "She's showing remarkable resilience," Dr. Chen told Maverick during one of their private sessions. "Children have an amazing capacity for healing when they're placed in a consistently safe, loving environment. The fact that she never completely stopped believing that you would come back for her, that's what saved her psychologically. That core of trust in your love for her remained intact, even through the worst of what she experienced." Maverick had taken early retirement from the Army to focus entirely on Sage's recovery and their relationship. They spent their days together, slowly and carefully rebuilding the bond that Delilah had tried so hard to destroy through months of calculated cruelty. They went to parks and museums, read books together for hours, played simple games, and gradually began to create new, happy memories to help overshadow the traumatic ones. "Daddy," Sage said one evening as they were reading before bed, her small hand resting trustingly on his arm. "I want to tell you something important." "What's that, baby girl?" "I'm not angry with you for going away to help other people. I know you had to do your job as a soldier, and you did come back, just like you promised you would." Maverick felt his throat tighten with emotion. After everything she had been through, his daughter was comforting him, absolving him of guilt he carried every day. "Thank you for saying that, sweetheart, but I should have known something was wrong much sooner than I did. I should have protected you better." Sage climbed into his lap, something she had started doing again as she began to feel truly safe for the first time in months. "You came back when I needed you most. That's what daddies do." Together, they had also decided to transform their backyard into something positive and life-affirming. Where there had once been the treehouse of horrors in their old home, they planted an elaborate garden. Sage chose all the flowers herself, bright yellow sunflowers that would grow taller than she was, purple pansies with faces that looked like they were smiling, and white daisies that reminded her of stars. Happy colors, she called them, and Maverick made sure to plant them exactly where she wanted them. The old oak tree in their previous yard was now just a memory, but the simple wooden swing that Maverick built in their new backyard became a source of pure joy. Sometimes in the evenings, he would push Sage on that swing while she laughed and begged him to push her higher. "Daddy, higher!" The sound of her uninhibited laughter was the most beautiful music he had ever heard, and he treasured every note of it. Final message. As the camera slowly fades to black, powerful white text appears against the darkness, each line appearing with deliberate, impactful timing. Every year, thousands of military children experience abuse and neglect while their parents are deployed overseas, fighting to protect our freedom. These children often suffer in silence, told that their pain is normal, that their suffering is making them stronger, that no one will believe them if they speak out. If you suspect that a child is being harmed, speak up, make the call, ask the questions. Your voice could be the difference between life and death for an innocent child. National Child Abuse Hotline, 1-800. Text HOME to 2330 for immediate help. Remember, children should never have to prove that they deserve love, safety, and warmth. These are their fundamental human rights, not privileges that must be earned through suffering. No child should ever have to count the days until rescue, while shivering alone in the dark. The final frame shows a simple but powerful image: a child's drawing of a house with a bright yellow sun, stick figures holding hands, and the words "safe at home" written in crayon at the bottom. The story ends not with revenge or bitterness, but with hope, hope that comes from a father's unconditional love, a daughter's incredible resilience, and a community that finally chose to protect its most vulnerable members, rather than look the other way. Hope that even in the darkest, coldest winter of the soul, spring will eventually come for those who survive long enough to see it. Sage Thornfield learned that being truly strong doesn't mean enduring suffering in silence or accepting abuse as a form of love. It means speaking truth to power, even when your voice shakes with fear. It means believing in the possibility of rescue, even when all evidence suggests that no one is coming. And most importantly, it means understanding that no child should ever have to face their nightmares completely alone. Staff Sergeant Maverick Thornfield learned that the greatest enemy isn't always on a foreign battlefield, wearing a different uniform. Sometimes it's hiding behind a familiar face in your own home, speaking in soothing, professional words while inflicting unimaginable cruelty on the person you love most in the world. He learned that a parent's instincts and intuition are worth more than any professional credentials or authoritative explanations, and that coming home from deployment isn't just about returning from overseas, it's about never leaving again when your child truly needs you. Their story serves as a powerful reminder that justice isn't just about punishment and retribution. It's about healing, prevention, and making absolutely certain that no other child has to endure what Sage endured. It's about creating a world where every child knows they are loved, protected, and valued simply for existing. In the end, love truly did conquer all, not through magic or miracles, but through the simple, profound act of a father who refused to ignore his instincts, and a little girl who never completely stopped believing that someone would come to save her. The treehouse may be gone forever, but the lessons it taught will live on, that evil can hide behind the kindest smiles and most professional demeanor, that silence is always the abuser's most powerful weapon, and that sometimes the bravest thing a child can do is simply survive until help finally arrives. And help will always come, as long as there are people in this world who are willing to open their eyes, trust their hearts, and take action when an innocent child's life hangs in the balance. This is more than just a story. It's a call to action, a reminder that we all have a responsibility to protect the children in our communities, and a testament to the incredible power of love to heal even the deepest wounds.